Jamie Pollard, Director of Athletics, Iowa State University. Get ready. He's joining us. There he is in Ames. Jamie, we're upset. It's like 17 degrees and a little bit of flurries. Is this like your normal day in Ames right now this time of the year?
Heck, if we had 17 in flurries, I could be in shorts and a T-shirt. At least you have 2 digits in your number.
Yeah. I love it.
It feels like zero, they say, though.
Yeah.
Oh, don't you love that? It feels like, yeah. Let me tell you how it feels.
Oh, man, it's great to see you. Absolutely. Thanks to Nick Jost for helping set this up. And we'll get into the ticket sales, Dublin, all of that, Sci-Town, all of that. But, Jamie, as you know, this week has been a lot of discussion about the future of the college football playoff and what the other conferences want more of, and maybe yours does get more too. Is this a turf war right now, in your opinion?
I don't know. I mean, I guess, at my mature age of 60 and been doing this for a long time, I'm more of just tell me what the dang rule's going to be.
There you go.
What's it going to be? And then we're going to figure out how to get in it. And so, if we only get 1, we only get 2. I mean, do I care? Yeah, I obviously want more. Who wouldn't, right? But tell me what it's going to be. And then I'm going to spend all my time and energy with Coach Campbell figuring out how we're going to win enough to get in it. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time, chasing around the people that want to, be king for the day.
That's interesting. You use that phrase there, the king for the day, because again, part of my problem with putting automatic qualifiers on anything, Jamie, is that's kind of flies in the face of sport. And you do that, you might be, like you said, king for the day, but things are cyclical. Things change around. The SEC had a run. The last 2 national champs have come from the Big Ten. Who knows what the future holds? That's why we play games, right?
Well, yes. And, and at its purity, you're absolutely right. But I also, and maybe wisdom comes with time, you also don't want to be a hypocrite. Like, so if we're on the short end of the stick in the Big 12, did we really care when the G5 was on the short end of the stick?
Yep.
Or when our commissioner's talking about, we should take all the basketball tournament and go do that, and you're going, really? Like, who's watching out for just the good of college sports? And I'm not convinced anybody is anymore because everybody's just looking out for their own selves. And so, maybe again, at this stage of my career, I've just stopped chasing being king of the day and just saying, okay, just tell me what it's going to be. And then I'm going to focus on what we can control, which is having really good coaches, having really good student athletes, and trying our darnest to be good at what we can do.
I brought this up
you know
yesterday.
What? It's working really well right now for Iowa State.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
You guys are pretty good at a lot of different things. There's no doubt about it. And in basketball, what you did in football, and more than that, too, in other sports. Mike, I brought this up yesterday about the way the revenue has changed in college sports. But the 2 conferences are getting the larger piece of the pie. And then if they get automatic bids that are twice as much or more than you, the Big 10 or 12 or the ACC or the group of 5, doesn't that just continue to separate even more and make it more difficult to compete straight up?
I mean, it does. Look at Major League Baseball right now. I mean, do you see the odds for the Dodgers to win the World Series compared to everybody else in Major League Baseball?
Yep.
And now you hear, I'm a Brewers fan, right? So I just heard the Brewers owner talking about this. Like, why did the NBA and why did the NFL figure out that, that's not the best way to do things? In the NFL and the NBA, he who's the best picks last and he's who the worst picks first. And, baseball doesn't seem to want to do that. And college football clearly doesn't want to do that, and there'll be a price to pay for that in the long run. But, while you're king for the day, you don't really care about the long run, apparently.
Jamie, you said something that earlier about just tell me what to do and we'll do it. How do you balance that with, the fans, the donors that say, like, well, we want to like, if they want 4, we want to have 4. Like, why are we doing this? Is that maybe the toughest tightrope walk you have to do, as a commissioner that's not in the SEC or the Big Ten right now?
Well, again, it goes back to, are you comfortable in your own skin? And, I mean, at least at Iowa State, I don't hear our fans spending a lot of time worrying about the SEC gets 4 or we get 2. It's, hey, at Iowa State, we've never won a Big 12 championship in football. We've been in 2 championship games, but so why are we so worried about that? Let's just take care of ourselves and be the best in the Big 12, and hopefully there's a home for that. And, if we can find a way to have more than just one, that's even better. But at the same time, holistically, as somebody that works in the industry, it does bother me that, we do want to make it not a competition and, pretty much prescribe what's going to happen. And I personally don't think that's healthy, but, I'm one voice, one vote. And quite frankly, I'm not even certain I'm one vote anymore, but I'm one voice, and, we'll play the cards we're dealt.
Jamie, you mentioned been to the Big 12 championship game twice, fell short this year last year against Arizona State. I mean, what a story they were, huh? I mean, coming in fresh and brand new. Just your thoughts on kind of what we've seen from them in football, BYU in football as well. The record they put up, what we're seeing from Arizona in basketball. How do you feel like this onboarding has gone and kind of what those others have brought to the table for the rest of the league?
Well, let me say 2 things, because my first response really is kind of back to what we were just talking about. Arizona State's exhibit A of what we're just saying. Mm-hmm. We all picked them to be 16th and they won our league. And, quite frankly, had Texas dead to rights. And it's a crying shame they didn't get off the field on 4th and 13. And it was a targeting. I don't care what you say. But that's living proof that if you just prescribe ahead of time what's going to happen, well, then Arizona State shouldn't have been in that spot, and they were. Yeah. And so, to me, that's a great example of what we were just talking about is, I don't know if it's the best thing we should be scripting out. It's going to be 4 from this conference and only 2 or 1 from that conference. Now, back to the root of your real question. I think it's awesome. It's been really fun. Our fans have embraced the ability. Heck, it was well documented in Sports Illustrated. I think we took 6,000 fans to our basketball game in Phoenix. So our fans have totally embraced the new members, and we're really excited this fall. We get BYU, Arizona, and Arizona State all at home in football. It'll be the first time any one of those schools has played up here. And, that's exciting. And I think our industry needs a little more of that. I think we can learn from that just in our bowl agreements going forward, that maybe we don't have prescribed bowl agreements and we need to keep some of that stuff open just to keep it interesting and get some natural rivalries that work geographically.
With the way things are, the House first settlement, the House settlement, how do you, as a university, when there is maybe $20 million or so that might be gone because of what happens going forward, how do you make up for that lost revenue?
That's far.
So much forgiveness. Wait, did you say forgiveness like far or forgiveness like forgiveness? Forgiveness. Forgiveness. Forgiveness.
I'm hearing far.
Forgiveness. Like forgiveness. Forgiveness? Forgiveness.
I'm still hearing far, but whatever.
Introducing Stealth 2 with more carbon for more forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Just hit it.
Well, we're at a crossroads in our industry because you're seeing it. It's as we look behind, I'm thinking of the Wizard of Oz, and we look behind the curtain, what we're starting to find, I don't think we're going to really like, which is higher education is starting to have to fund a lot of athletics. And, that's going to probably cost some presidents and ADs jobs in the long run, because I don't think that's sustainable. But in the short term, you're seeing it. Schools are funding a big portion of their athletics department, or disclosing that they're funding. I mean, what we just saw out of Rutgers is mind-boggling. To think that the university budgeted $29 million annually to support them, and they still went over by $41 million more for a total of 70. How an institution can do that. I know at Iowa State we couldn't do that. So I think that's going to be the bigger challenge long term. And, we're all kind of betting on the come, in the Big 12, can we hang around long enough to, get to the new television deal in 31, and will that kind of fix it? But the question I'd ask is, what if it doesn't? But at the same time, no one wants to raise their hand and say, we're out. So you got to find a way to stay in the game until you can't. And that's going to force institutions into probably funding a big portion of the house settlement. And again, I don't think that's the right long-term approach, but each institution is going to have to decide what they're willing to risk.
Where do you stand on collectively bargaining with athletes?
I hear a lot of people say that's the ultimate solution, and maybe it is. Again, I don't know if I'm as focused on trying to figure that out, because I've long since figured out that, my voice doesn't really matter. And so right now it seems like the commissioners are going to decide everything. So if that's where we end up, then, as I said at the beginning, just tell me what it's going to be and then we'll figure it out. But I do worry a little bit about that because, we're not pro sports. And here's the biggest difference. Go read right now. Street and Smith had a great article this last week. All the Major League Baseball teams, how much they're losing annually. Mm-hmm. Pro sports loses money annually. It's a bad business. But what it has is there's always the next rich up-and-come entrepreneur that's willing to buy a franchise, because the equity is where the money gets made. And so this whole discussion of bringing private equity into college sports, we're not going to sell Iowa State University. The state's not going to sell it. So how are you ever going to get that money back? There's no equity that all of a sudden is going to be resold. So if we start losing money like pro teams, the pro teams can get out of it when the owner dies, or, they decide to bring on minority investors that bring cash in to infuse. But at a college, a university, you're not going to do that. So at the end of the day, the state's going to have to suck up and pay all those ultimate losses if that's where we end up. And so I worry about overlaying the professional model. I just think we've fantasized our way to think that we need to have general managers and, all these buzzwords that are related to pro sports, when it's not a professional sports model and it never will be.
Jamie, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you think that the leaders of college sports actually care about college sports, or do they care about just the almighty dollar?
You're painting with a broad brush by saying the leaders.
All right, the commissioners. Yeah.
Well, I think I think each one of them comes through their own lens. And I'm not going to name names, but there's several that I think are pretty pure about the college space. And I think there are several that care about one thing and one thing only, and that is, can I get another deal done?
Fair enough.
Yeah. I think
that sounds like what it looks like to me.
That's what we've talked about. Really, we do that more than just the last couple of days. We've done that for quite some time. Paul?
Do you the 2031 feels like a long time away, but it's only 6 years from now. But we've seen a lot can happen in 3 years. Do you feel that house settlement will maybe stem the tide of change for a little while? Because you guys have to figure out, after a year, what can we do better? Where can we funnel money? Where can we get money? Where can all this go? That maybe the tide of change will slow for a little while.
Well, let's hope so. Because at the end of the day, it takes money to make this go around. And, I've said this from the get-go, and this is my fear, and I think this is what's happening. Back in the day, coaches' salaries used to be paid outside the institutions. And a coach got paid if they went out and hoofed and sold sponsors for their radio show, TV show, but they only could get paid what they brought in because, they had their own little checking account. They were having somebody, go sell their sponsorships, do all their stuff. And, it worked, but, nobody got overpaid because they could only get paid what they could generate. And then we thought it was a really wise idea that for institutional control, we needed to bring all that in-house. And as soon as that happened, agents just started saying, well, this is what it's going to cost you to pay that coach. And it had nothing to do with what revenue they could generate. Well, we're doing the same thing with student athletes now. And when we had the collectives on the outside, maybe we didn't like some of that, but like at Iowa State, all we could pay our athletes was what the collective could raise. And now all of a sudden, we're going to pay them $20 million, which is 4 times what our collective raised last year. So we've already demonstrated that we have no control. And I'm watching what we did with coaches play out. And that's my fear, because that's what got us in trouble in the first place, is that we overpaid for all these coaches' salaries and buyouts and made really bad business decisions.
Or do you feel like you negotiate against yourself a lot of times when it comes to coach's contract?
I've always said this, again, I'm going to use baseball analogy. I love baseball, though Iowa State doesn't have it. The Minnesota Twins or the Milwaukee Brewers let's use the Brewers. In the last 7 years, they've won 4 pennants. They've been in the playoffs 6 of the last 7 years, but they got an owner. And when the owner says, I'm not going to pay Willie Adames and let him go to the Giants for whatever it was, or I'm not going to pay this player and let him go because we're going to go with the rookie and pay less. As a fan, I don't have to like it, but he's the owner and it's his money. I'm not the owner of Iowa State. So at some point, if I said, well, let Matt Campbell or TJ go, we'll just go get, the next up and comer. At some point, some board member is going to go to the president and say, Jamie needs to go. Because I don't own it, and that's what, when you say negotiating against yourself, that's what I think is, you're negotiating against the emotion of your fans or your highly paid donors that are your boards that think that they can do this better.
You were on the basketball committee and served that term, and I think last September was your last time of being a part of it. There is now discussion, speaking of change, of adding more teams to the tournament. In my opinion, it's about as perfect as it can be. In your opinion, since you've been inside that room and been in those committees and all that, what, in your opinion, is the best way?
I mean, I'm with you that I don't think it's broken, so be careful trying to fix it. That being said, I think the analysis shows that you could absorb a small expansion. There are some landlocked things that a lot of people don't think about. Conference tournaments are where they are. The Masters is where it is. So you got to squeeze it all in. So you're not going to be able to add many more games. You can maybe add another date and site. But if you do more than that, you're suddenly going to be playing games not on the weekends anymore. And then, is that fan friendly? And are you going to have people traveling with their teams? So I think we're, given the landlocks of conference tournaments and the Masters, there is a limit. There's a finite number of games you can play in there and keep it on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then, you got to ask yourself, does it really feel like you're in the tournament if you play in your conference tournament on Saturday, you find out Sunday night you're in the NCAA tournament and you're flying to Dayton on Tuesday and you lose and it's over? Were you really in the NCAA tournament? And I think that's a question we'd have to ask ourselves, because if, right now, a finite number, a few schools do that, but if all of a sudden you're going to say 12 or 16 schools are doing that, I think you're going to dumb down the tournament for some teams that might not be well received.
He is the director of athletics at Iowa State, Jamie Pollard, with us on 365 Sports. Craig?
Jamie, I don't think you guys played all Saturday games last year in football, but you're just kind of talking about some of the things you might have to move around. What did you think of the approach and the need, obviously, with TV network slots for the league to be playing more of these weekday games, and just kind of how you've seen the schedule sort of evolve and how it possibly will evolve? How do you feel about those types of things?
I think you got to look at those very, very carefully. I think there's, compromise, but at the same time, we are asking a ton of our fans, ticket sales, donations, now, pay the athletes. And if you start moving that inventory, those games into situations that aren't very attractive to them, that can be a real slippery slope. And so I think you got to be really careful. At the same time, I recognize we got to generate money, and eyeballs and television drives a big part of that. And so finding windows that work with your television partners is really important. I commend, Commissioner Yormark for widening the breadth of who is going to televise games over the next several years for us, bringing, Turner to the table, bringing CBS in basketball was huge because they're getting a taste of the Big 12, and that will hopefully create some competition in 2031. But I think you got to be really sensitive to how much you move out of the traditional windows, because it can have a big negative impact. We've seen it even with late night football games, playing on the West Coast at, 8 or 9 o'clock starts where it's 11 o'clock back home. Is that the right thing? I don't know. Got to be careful.
You are headed to Dublin for Farmageddon to kick off the football season next year. That is an opportunity to get your team on a stage alone that doesn't come around too often, and a great trip for your fans, for your players. What are your thoughts on kicking it off? Underneath the Blarney Stone, so to speak.
We are so excited as an institution. Number one, at the core, when I went to Coach Campbell about it, he didn't even hesitate. He was like, we're in, let's do it. This is exactly what I talked to my team about, that we're going to use sport to prepare these young men for life. And the opportunity for most of these young men will never get to do an internship, never get to do a study abroad, may never ever get to travel internationally in their lives. And the fact that we can take them to Ireland and have them have to get a passport, little things like that are just really, I think, what using sport as an educational tool is all about. And then from an institutional standpoint, this isn't a football game. This is an Iowa State event in Ireland. We can see it and we sold 7,000 tickets in the first 2 days that we put them on sale. People are going to flock to go over there because they're proud and want to be in Ireland with fellow Iowa Staters. Oh, and by the way, we're going to end the trip with a football game. And then we're going to get to do it against our neighbors, our friends at K-State. And I so applaud and thank Coach Kleiman and Gene Taylor, because it's their home game they're giving up. And quite frankly, I don't know if I could have pulled that off. There might have been a lot of pressure not to do that. But they were willing to, be a dance partner with us over there and give up their home game. And so a lot of credit to Coach Kleiman, because he shared the same values as Coach Campbell, that this is such a unique opportunity to do this for the young men in that program. And then on top of it, yes, it's week 0. Hopefully Gameday will go over there, and it will be an awesome info commercial for the Big 12 and for K-State and Iowa State.
We saw the schedule released a couple of weeks ago, and there seems to be kind of a mixed bag of what rivalry games are. Did you get a heads up from the Big 12 office that K-State, Iowa State, Farmageddon would not be an every year game?
Yeah, we knew that, because each of us, in theory, they could protect one rivalry, right? And some of us have a natural rivalry and some of us don't. So K-State and KU was going to be protected. And for Iowa State, yeah, K-State's probably the best football rivalry, but that would give them 2, and so we didn't have a natural one. And, and that's unfortunate, but it is what it is, because as soon as you give them 2, then you're going to end up with some unbalances that we're not going to like down the road, unintended consequences where we're going to say, wait a second, they got an easier schedule because they got to protect, and so, and I get that. And most fans don't want to hear that or don't think that through. But, to create balance, you had to give everybody 2 or everybody 1. But you can't give some 2 and others none or others 1. So I get it. KU is their draw, and that was the game that had to be protected.
Have you ever been to Dublin?
Coach Campbell and our wives, we got to go this past summer to do a 5-day or 4-day, recon trip. So we've seen the stadium. We've seen the spots. Let's just say that.
Well, that's good. And like a scouting report, or a scouting trip or whatever. Reconnaissance is a great word. Town. I saw where a couple of people commented on the video presentation. How is that coming along, and is it exactly what you wanted it to be? And I know you got to go.
It turned out really well. The feedback from our fans getting that video out there was really, really helpful. And it allows us to move to the next stage in this project, which is we're going to have to sell. But that's awesome because the fall of 2027 will come really quick, and that's when the developer wants to have it all up and running. So, the next 2 to 2.5 years is going to be heavy construction around Iowa State, but that's also exciting. I've often said, if you don't have a crane on campus, you're going backwards. So, but this is a big, big opportunity for our university to rekindle what James Hilton started in the 1950s when he had the idea of the Iowa State Center and Hilton and Jack Trice. And unfortunately, things had become dated, had become somewhat obsolete, and Town allows us to infuse new monies, new ideas, and create a really vibrant area right in the heart of the athletic complexes.
Have fun in Houston. That ought to be a hell of a basketball game with what you guys have and what they have, huh?
Well, we hope so. I was watching the Baylor Bears play Arizona the other night, and my wife and I were cheering hard for Baylor. Nothing against my Arizona friends, but we needed Arizona to take on a loss. So, doggone it. But no, the end of the last 2 weeks here will be some pretty intense basketball games. So,
Jamie, you've given us a lot of time. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I enjoy being on with you guys. You guys are very knowledgeable, very contemporary, and you're fun to talk to.
Thank you, and we love your opinions and appreciate the transparency on the
I appreciate just the straight shooting.
No,
I appreciate just
absolutely.
no fluff and the straight shooting. That's not always the case in a position like yours. So we do appreciate that about you, and thank you for your time.
Well, it gets me in trouble sometimes, but hey, if
It's
I said
worth
it,
it,
I have
Jamie.
to own it. I always say, if I say it, I own it.
That's why we love you, man. Jamie Pollard, the director of athletics at Iowa State, with us.